I got a very good P score. It's statistically significant. There's an inverse relationship between your website grader score and your AI search grader score. It is negative. And I've been pondering on this a lot because I
didn't expect that.
Very exciting finding. Here is the key insight. If you look at what impacts your score on website grader, it's things like how fast does your page load? Do you have meta tags? It's not really about the experience or the quality of the content.
When you talk about how we're all learning how to prompt better, we're learning that we can be very precise. The more precise you are in the prompt, the more precise an answer you're going to get. And so being a provider of precise answers is an asset. Hi, I'm Greg Linneman Sons, president of Whiter Group. Joining me today is Kyle Jepson. We wanted to segue into talking a little bit about the experiment that you did. Could you frame, let's just leap right into that.
Happy to.
Describe the experiment.
HubSpot started in 2006 with this crazy idea of inbound marketing, right? A small and mid-sized business can just produce content on the internet and get found through Google. That was the theory our founders had. And it started as a philosophy, and then they built software to support it. Worked great in 2006. Now, 2023, 2024, the internet is changing really rapidly with AI. Things like ChatGPT and Perplexity. People are still going to Google. I'm not one of these people who's going to say traditional SEO is dead, but there's this whole other thing happening now where people ask AI questions. And if I'm looking for a mover, if I'm going to move somewhere, I might just, instead of doing a Google search of movers in Boston, I might just go to Perplexity and say, who are the best movers in Boston for a family moving from this kind of house to that kind of house, and get specific recommendations. And I started to wonder, how do you solve for that? Are the principles the same? If you're good at getting found on Google, will you be good at getting found on Perplexity? Is the game changing? And HubSpot came out with this tool called AI Search Grader. It's just HubSpot.com/AI-search-grader. And I was so excited about this because one of the first things HubSpot ever built was called Website Grader, where you put in your domain and it grades the SEO. Like how
I remember it fondly.
Yeah, and it still exists. You can go to websitegrader.com and it'll give you recommendations of how to improve your SEO. We're doing the same thing now. At first, it was just ChatGPT results. Just recently, it now has Perplexity support too. And so you can go in, put information about your company, and it'll tell you how often are you coming up in ChatGPT and Perplexity answers. And is the AI talking positively or negatively about your brand? It does sentiment analysis. And this to me is so exciting. The best practices for getting found through these AI chatbot sorts of things are not known, and they probably change every week. But just knowing how you're doing is such an important starting point. So I got curious. I asked my network, hey, can you all just jump on websitegrader.com and HubSpot.com/AI-search-grader and get your 2 scores and submit them in this anonymous form? And so I forget, I don't have it in front of me, but I got a fairly good number of people to do that. And then in the spreadsheet, I just used a Google form. So they all ended up in a spreadsheet, and I just did a basic correlation test. And it was, I got a very good P score. It's statistically significant. There's an inverse relationship between your website grader score and your AI search grader score. It is negative. And I've been pondering on this a lot because
you didn't expect that.
Very exciting finding. But I've spent some time looking at website grader, and I've spent some time looking at AI search grader. And I think here is the key insight. If you look at what impacts your score on website grader, it's things like how fast does your page load? Do you have meta tags? It's not really about the experience or the quality of the content. It's how well the web page functions, and is Google going to be able to understand what's on it?
So it's a mechanical evaluation.
Yeah. For AI, it's all about the quality of the content, right? If you don't have a lot of domain authority, if you aren't very good at meta tags, that doesn't matter because ChatGPT and Perplexity are just reading your website and understanding the content, right? Which is a much more, it matches the experience of what a human would do. So I would say you need that score of, you should still lean into SEO. You should have a high performing website. If your page takes forever to load, people are going to bounce. That's still just human behavior. But what we really need to do in this AI powered world is take a hard look at the actual words and sentences and paragraphs on our pages and understand, are they answering a specific question? If you're a mover in Boston, does your website answer questions like, what consideration should I have? Like, how do stairs work? Like, is it hard to move a piano? Whatever questions people have about moving, you should just have tons and tons of content answering those very specific questions. So if I go to Perplexity and say, what's the easiest way to move a piano from one house to another in Boston? Perplexity says, oh, there's this company that specializes in it. You should call them, right? And so I don't think that inverse relationship means you need to sacrifice your SEO juice in order to improve your content. I think what it means is we've been thinking so hard about the mechanics of a website. We're not as invested as AI wants us to be in the depth and breadth of the content on our page. So I think lots of specific answers to specific questions, just start pumping them out. And I think that is, at least today, I've not gotten very far in this, but that's my hypothesis about what's going on.
Is it possible, Kyle, that because they self-selected, you got people participating who were either doing one or the other?
It could be.
And that's how you got that inverse relationship.
Right. I mean, my audience definitely skews HubSpot users. So let's assume a lot of these people are using HubSpot CMS to build their website. You get a lot of the performance stuff for free if you're using a good CMS, right? But the content stuff you don't get for free. If you just started on HubSpot today and your website is just like a contact us form and a brief description of your company, then there's no, if Perplexity is looking around, because when you fill in when you go to AI Search Grader, it asks you your company name, your industry. It's like 4 little questions. And so it can construct prompts that might cause, like, what is the best marketing agency in Chicago or whatever, right?
Yeah. And I actually used the tool as prep for this talk.
Yeah.
And I played around with those dimensions.
Yeah.
That I can create my own framework. I can even create my geography. I can say I'm U.S. or I can say I'm Northeast Wisconsin. So you're creating your context.
Yeah. And so I think, if you use AI Search Grader and your score is worse than you would expect, then I think just start thinking about what kind of questions would you want to lead people, right? If someone's sitting around and they're just like, I'm going to ask Perplexity or ChatGPT real quick this random question about a problem I have, there's an opportunity for you to insert yourself in the conversation right then, right? Yep. And in some ways, it's just the old story of content marketing. But I think what is new is people are going to ask exceedingly specific questions. And if someone asks, the best way to do this particular thing in this particular part of the world, and you have a page called the best way to do this particular thing in this particular part of the world, perfect. You're going to show up, right? And
that's interesting because when you talk about how we're all learning how to prompt better, we're learning that we can be very precise. The more precise you are in the prompt, the more precise an answer you're going to get. And so being a provider of precise answers is an asset. When you learn who your ICP is really well, and you know what matters most to them, that does sound like an opportunity. It feels like that's the direction we all should be thinking about.
For sure. Yeah, and if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, wow, Kyle, on the one hand, it makes sense. Answering these questions is helpful. But on the other hand, I don't know what the questions are. Your company actually does know what these questions are. Ask your sales reps, ask your customer support teams. The people who interface with your customers and prospects, they know what the questions are. And some of them can be answered in a few short sentences. Some of them take pages to answer. But just if you make even 4 or 5 of these pages, that's going to help. And if you can generate 100 of them, then it's going to help a lot.
So part of the advice here is one of the oldest pieces of advice in the marketing world, which is know your customers. Really know your customers.
Yeah. And a fun experiment I'm doing right now, I don't know the results of this one yet, but I was camping with some friends a couple months ago, and one friend said she was starting her own business. She had just launched her website. And I said, really? Can I? And so it's here in Boston, and it's a music lessons marketplace. She's finding music lesson teachers, and she's finding people who wants music lessons, and she's matching them together. And she said, I'm not getting any traffic to my website. And I said, well, I've got an idea. And so I went over to her house. My wife and I went and hung out with her family during lunchtime one day, and I just started recording audio on my computer, and I just asked her all the questions. Who is your ideal customer? What areas do you serve? How much does it cost? What types of instruments do you provide lessons for? What if I don't like the instructor you match me with? And we talked for an hour, and I got an hour of audio. And then I came home and I fed it into HubSpot's content remixes tool and told it to pump out blog posts. And it pumped out blog posts, one for each of these like 25 questions I asked her. And then I spent an afternoon revising and fact checking, right? But I would say in 5 hours of work, I produced something like 20,000 words of content. And I gave it to her and I said, put it on your website. And so she is now in the process of putting that on her website. And in 2 or 3 months, we're going to circle back and see what it did for her traffic. But I just, for her, it was like no work at all, right? And I was just the unpaid intern who did the work.
Now, you know that makes us competitors now.
Oh, well, this is not a service I'm offering. Please, nobody call me and ask me to do this for you. This is for my own education and experiment I'm running for a friend. It's
a great example of the absolute dramatically changing face of how do we get things done in the business that we're in. And we're still figuring that out. And you just demonstrated to her there's a lot of ways to get this done.
Yeah.
And doing something is better than not.
Yeah. And I will say, to her credit, she knew her customers really well. I was worried I was going to go in and ask, what happens if someone's unhappy with the instructor you match them with? And she was going to say, ooh, I don't know. We haven't encountered that. Or if I was going to say, how much does it cost? And she was going to say, well, but she knew the answers. She understood how it worked. She had enough experience that she was able to articulate all this stuff.
Yeah.
If you, whoever you are, don't know the answers to some of the hard questions people ask you or might ask you, then you got to figure out the answers first. But then you put them on your website, and those will start being the source of truth. If you're the only one answering that particular question, then I think it's a safe bet that ChatGPT and Perplexity are going to rely on you as an authority.
Yeah. So start with knowing.
Yep.
Well, Kyle, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a wonderful conversation. I never don't learn when I'm talking with you, and I really appreciate that. I like to tell our audience, if you're not following Kyle Jebsen, you need to be, because we all do, and we all keep learning from him. And so look for him. He is now an experienced keynote speaker, so he's probably going to show. He's going to be showing up at some events as we get into the season this year. And Kyle, know that you're always welcome, whether you want to come here and be part of our conference or just show up again on the Changeover podcast. We would love to have you anytime you've got something you want to talk about.
Well, great. Thanks so much. I'd be happy to come back anytime. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again, Kyle. Look forward to the next time we talk.
Me too.
Thanks for joining us on the Changeover podcast. Remember to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Wider.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let us know what you'd like to hear about next time by messaging Wider Group on social media. Thanks for watching.